I'll share my screen once it loads.
While I can't tell you the last time I played a video game.
Do I need to download something, or I sound like sound like my dad.
They have always been a huge part of Alex Newhouse's life.
They are a place for creative expression. They're a place to figure out what your personal identity is in a good way.
But he's not meeting with me just to play. He works with the Middlebury Institute. Alex is one of the leading researchers looking at how extremist groups like white supremacists are using video games to recruit new members or radicalize those who could be susceptible.
A lot of times it's adolescents doing this during very important, sort of foundational moments in their lives.
If you're from the era of the original Nintendo, you have to understand how games have changed. No longer are they just a place for someone to disconnect on the couch. Many are like their own social media platforms where players communicate, play together, and build meaningful relationships.
They have become these places where people live significant portions of their lives.
According to the Anti-Defamation League, 10% of young gamers admit they've been exposed to white supremacist ideology while playing with others online. That's almost 1.5 million people between 13 and 17 years old.
What will happen is we'll see like 2 or 3 hardened extremists going into those lobbies and using basically like really intense racial slurs or other types of extremist language. And they are basically looking for positive responses from other people in the lobby.
And meeting with Alex, it didn't take long for me to see that as he walked me through a popular PC game any of us can buy online for $9.99.
You can just like put in an I-beam.
It's a game where players create their own worlds where other players can enter and interact with each other. He says extremist groups often create worlds full of hateful images.
I mean, how hard is it to find those specific worlds?
Yeah, when I was preparing for this interview, actually, it took me about 20 seconds to find an Auschwitz concentration camp simulator.
I'm not going to show you the anti-Semitic imagery, but I saw it for myself.
Like, I don't think this one is particularly interested in historical reconstruction and historic value.
If you're like me, you're wondering how images and messages like that could be so out in the open.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
It's why I reached out to Carnegie Mellon University's Kathleen Carley. She's studied how extremist groups have used the internet for decades.
It's very complex because, for example, let's say that the tech companies themselves wanted to stop this. Well, what are at their disposal are things like banning, doing content moderation, suspending accounts, etc. What we've seen is whenever they do things like that, it pushes things underground.
Alex points to studies that have found no link between violence in video games and violence in real life. But he says he's working with tech companies to create ways to combat hateful content like what he showed me. He says it's on parents to be involved because bad actors are casting a wide net in hopes someone will join them.